Thus it may be known that the leader of armies is the arbiter of the people's fate. The man on whom it depends, whether the nation shall be in peace, or in peril. Hold out baits to entice the enemy. Feign disorder, and crush him. You may advance, and be absolutely irresistible. If you make for the enemy's weak points, you may retire, and be safe from pursuit, if your movements are more rapid than those of the enemy. In the practical art of war, the best thing of all, is to take enemy's country whole, and intact, to shatter and destroy. It is not so good. So, too, it is better to capture an army entire, than to destroy it, to capture a regiment, a detachment, or a company entire, than to destroy them. It is the rule in war, if our forces are 10 to the enemy's 1, to surround him, if 5 to 1, to attack him, if twice as numerous, to divide our army into 2. If equally matched, we can offer battle, if slightly inferior in numbers, we can avoid the enemy. If quite unequal in every way, we can flee from him. Hence, though an obstinate fight may be made by a small force, in the end, it must be captured by the larger force. Hence the saying, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy, nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. To secure ourselves against defeat, lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy, is provided by the enemy himself.
Dr. Mahathir is a true leader-learner who never stops learning, not even in a while. In A Doctor in the House, he clearly expressed his passion for leadership learning. Up to his retirement in 2003, he never stopped learning. His decision to resign from the Prime Minister's post in that year was made based on his thorough study upon the people's desire. He discovered that in the eyes of the people, his leadership was not attractive anymore, even though he felt confident and capable to continue leading the country. Thorough observation on Dr. Mahathir's leadership journey of criticizing Najib Razak administration pointed towards 3 stages of leadership, namely 1. Active-constructive leadership, 2. Reactive-destructive leadership, and 3. Proactive reformative leadership. These 3 stages is comparable to the concept of a leadership circle adapted from Stephen Covey's circle of concern and circle of influence.
As we go about our lives, we operate in 2 circles. The first is our circle of concern. These are things that we care about, or may even affect us, but over which we have little or no control. The second is our circle of influence. These are things which we can control or influence. When people are reactive, they focus on the outer circle. They spend time and energy on things that they really can do nothing about. As a result, their circle of influence shrinks. When people are proactive, they focus on their inner circle of influence, where their efforts will make a positive difference in relationships and results. As a result, their circle of influence grows.
Active constructive leadership. From the problem-based perspective, January to August 2015, Dr. Mahathir leadership learning indicated some significant results related to 4 main issues. 1 is Najib's leadership, 2 is race-based politics and its relevancy, 3 is how to get people to return their support for the ruling party, and 4, other crucial factors such as UMNO and country's leadership in general, party's direction, money politics, corruption, people's standard and cost of living, and etc. These 4 issues are the direction of learning from which we could understand the real cause of the problem. Based on this discussion, we could list down Dr. Mahathir's focus in his leadership learning, and from there on identify the most possible cause of the problem. The period between January to August 2015 was labeled by Dr. Mahathir as Dr. Mahathir's active constructive leadership due to its nature of his main objective to constructively cure the party and country's leadership problems using Najib's alleged involvement in the 1MDB scandal from within. Having discovered the real cause of the scandal, Dr. Mahathir began to assess a bunch of options in front of him. He had already openly asked Najib to resign and had also urged UMNO members and leaders to use their democratic rights to voice out their dissatisfaction and force Najib to resign. This could be considered as an internal approach, the active constructive leadership participation.
The period between January to August 2015 was labeled as Dr. Mahathir's active constructive leadership, due to the nature of his main objective, to constructively cure the party and country's leadership problems, using Najib's alleged involvement in the 1MDB scandal from within. This could be considered as an internal approach, the active, constructive leadership participation.
Reactive-destructive leadership. Dr. Mahathir's active constructive leadership had unsuccessfully achieved its target. His message demanding Najib's resignation was ignored, so much so his message to UMNO members and leaders to use their democratic rights and force Najib to resign. Now he had to move to the next leadership approach, an external approach, the reactive-destructive leadership participation. This second approach was the one that he hated the most. In the past, he used to criticize his political adversaries, including Anwar and other opposition leaders who inclined to take their dissatisfaction over his leadership to the street protests. Now, after looking at the possible damages done by Najib leadership, he had to reconsider his view on this reactive-destructive leadership. My other thing is to take the protest to the street. Dr. Mahathir could not see any possible solution except turn to the people's power through the ballot box. To do that, he decided to resign from UMNO as he believed that the party was no more the People's Party. It was already Najib's party. He said,
"I want to leave UMNO because it is no longer UMNO. It is a party dedicated to supporting Najib, protecting Najib, and upholding whatever it is that he does, including some of the wrong things that he has done."
To show his strong will to oust Najib, he stood up with opposition leaders and led them in Save Malaysia campaign through a citizens' declaration to save the country from becoming a failed state. This is another major step in project organized problem-based leadership learning. If Dr. Mahathir wants to take charge of the change project, he must take a clear stand and from there on lead the project. In this case, the project is about ousting Najib and his party through the ballot box and democratic approach in the election. It was a reactive and destructive leadership approach, an attacking approach to destroy Najib's character and weaken his party. Dr. Mahathir already sensed that people, including the opposition parties, were strongly dependent on his leadership. As Sun Tzu once said in The Art of War,
"Thus it may be known that the leader of armies is the arbiter of the people's fate. The man on whom it depends, whether the nation shall be in peace, or in peril. Hold out baits to entice the enemy. Feign disorder, and crush him."
Dr. Mahathir had been all the way focusing on Najib's corrupt leadership. He believed this is the main cause of almost all the country's leadership problems. This is also the weakest point of Najib's leadership. From the perspective of wars and battles, a commander should constantly attack and rapidly advance towards this focus. Sun Tzu wrote in his The Art of War,
"You may advance, and be absolutely irresistible. If you make for the enemy's weak points, you may retire, and be safe from pursuit. if your movements are more rapid than those of the enemy.
Dr. Mahathir's active constructive leadership had unsuccessfully achieved its target. His message demanding Najib's resignation was ignored, so much so his message to UMNO members and leaders to use their democratic rights and force Najib to resign. Now, he had to move to the next leadership approach, an external approach, the reactive, destructive leadership participation. Looking at the possible damages done by Najib, he had to reconsider his view on this reactive, destructive leadership. Among other things is to take the protest to the street.
Proactive, reformative leadership. Another major blow for Najib came to the public in July 2016 when the United States Department of Justice (DOJ) released a full report on the 1MDB scandal. All suspects, including Najib's stepson, close associate Joe Low, were named in the document. Najib, however, was not specifically named but could easily be recognized through an individual named by the DOJ as Malaysian Officer 1 or MO1. Later, his minister acknowledged that MO1 was referring to Najib. Dr. Mahathir could not wait anymore. It was a great chance for him to continue his attack, but he should consider forming his own battalion to maneuver effectively. This is in line with project organized problem-based leadership learning, where you have to form a team to manage the project and achieve its goal. Together with former Deputy Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin, he formed a new party called Parti Pribumi Bersatu Malaysia, or Bersatu. The party was in many ways replicated UMNO's struggle and form. Its aims is to strengthen the position of the Malays and indigenous people and to work together with other opposition parties in a coalition of a multi-ethnic political movement. This will be a direct threat to UMNO, and certainly Najib will not be happy.
Dr. Mahathir had formed a new party, PPBM, and worked together with other opposition parties in a coalition of a multi-ethnic political movement of Pakatan Harapan. The strategies were intensified through the second half of 2016. It was a proactive and reformative leadership approach.
Dr. Mahathir and his party leaders realized this difficulty, but they maintained their efforts to grow the support through twofold strategies. One is to intensify attack on Najib's corrupt leadership so that he lost the support from his loyalists, and two, to work closely with opposition parties who were all his former political adversaries. These strategies were intensified through the second half of 2016. The ability to work closely with other opposition parties was another landmark success for Dr. Mahathir's project organized problem-based leadership learning. It was a proactive and reformative leadership approach. He was like a retired 5-star general who returned to the battle with a small army unit of a battalion. The battle is not only to wipe out the enemy but also to redevelop the country that was in the poorest state of leadership. Sun Tzu once said,
"In the practical art of war, the best thing of all is to take enemy's country whole and intact, to shatter and destroy. It is not so good. So, too, it is better to capture an army entire than to destroy it, to capture a regiment, a detachment, or a company entire, than to destroy them."
To achieve this objective, he must increase the fighting skill. To this date, he and his small battalion had been involved in skirmishes with Najib's field army. It was almost impossible to achieve the total victory if he maintains only the small fighting. To increase the fighting skill, he should expand his battalion into a bigger army unit, if possible into an army corps or a field army comparable to Najib's. Sun Tzu said,
"It is the rule in war, if our forces are 10 to the enemy's 1, to surround him, if 5 to 1, to attack him, if twice as numerous, to divide our army into 2. If equally matched, we can offer battle, if slightly inferior in numbers, we can avoid the enemy. If quite unequal in every way, we can flee from him. Hence, though an obstinate fight may be made by a small force, in the end, it must be captured by the larger force.
2017 was the most critical year for Dr. Mahathir to decide whether to form his own army corps or join the existing opposition pack of Pakatan Harapan. Certainly, the best option is to join the opposition pack. At any time, Najib will dissolve the parliament to make way for the 14th general election. Joining the opposition pack is the quickest way to get ready for the election with a match force equal to Najib's Barisan Nasional. From the perspective of project organized problem-based leadership learning, Dr. Mahathir is the project leader who was appointed to lead the Safe Malaysia project through a democratic election to oust Najib and his party from the government. As a project leader, Dr. Mahathir brought his leadership experience and years of problem-based analysis on Najib's leadership into opposition's Safe Malaysia project implementation. Working together, they laid a victory plan. Every possible opportunity, so much so every possible challenge was analyzed. At this point, nothing is more important than knowing their strengths and weaknesses as well as Najib's side. Dr. Mahathir must have understood the strategy very well. From the perspective of Sun Tzu's The Art of War, Dr. Mahathir at this point was already made a general leading an army corps. He should be able to know his army and the enemy very well. Sun Tzu said,
Hence the saying, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy, nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle.
2017 was indeed a battle year between the opposition and Najib's ruling party to get into the strongest stand before the coming 14th general election. The real clash, however, revolved around the personal leadership of Dr. Mahathir and Najib. Dr. Mahathir had already targeting Najib's leadership since his poor performance in the 13th general election and intensified further after the outbreak of a 1MDB scandal. He was already in the offensive mode. Generally, Najib had his upper hand on Dr. Mahathir during the 2017 clash. On Dr. Mahathir's side, he seemed to be focusing more on defending himself and working towards strengthening Pakatan Harapan. However, moving into 2018, Dr. Mahathir had changed his defensive tactic to offensive tactic, leading the party into the 14th general election as the chairman and the prime minister in waiting. Dr. Mahathir intensified his attack on Najib's leadership and his dirty tactics. May the 9th, 2018 will certainly be the most memorable moment for many Malaysians who voted for the change and to save Malaysia from becoming a failed state. Dr. Mahathir and Pakatan Harapan won the 14th general election with 113 seats. A simple majority enabled them to form the next federal government. For the first time since 1955, the Barisan Nasional was defeated in general election and ousted from the federal government. Najib's corrupt leadership proved to be the major cause for the Barisan Nasional defeat. On the other hand, Dr. Mahathir's exceptional leadership was highly applauded by the major force as the major force for the Pakatan Harapan's victory. Truly, this is what Sun Tzu used to say.
To secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself.
Studies prove that Dr. Mahathir's leadership is one of the major factors that brought the leadership change to Malaysia in 2018 14th general election.